Alright, good morning and good afternoon or good evening depending on where you are. Took me a while to figure out some of my audio issues. Hopefully this sounds better. Alright, we are now on chapter 2 of Tanya the Evil, or Yojo Senki. So, a quick recap is how we start this off. We have our main character. He is, or was, a modern day salaryman paid by his company to, let's say, streamline operations. But he actually took great pleasure in separating the useless shaft from those who were actually a benefit to society, in his words. And his story was unfortunately cut short by one of the people that met his anger. So, both the train and his promising life were derailed in the same instant. And off he goes to a new life. And in this new world, or before he goes into the new world, he meets a being who shall be named Being X, or at least that's the name the man gave him. Being X took pity on this faithless lamb, to give you an idea of who this Being X might be, and graciously granted the man a second chance. He would be reborn in a non-scientifically based world as a girl. He would know war and be overcome by the trials within. With this, the man was thrown into a world soon to be awash in magic, bullets, and fire. So, here we are, back to well, I wouldn't say current day, but where we left off in chapter 1. By some trick of the gods, a cute little girl of only 9 was caught up in the Empire's defense of the northern region. Surrounded on all sides by enemies, she fought tooth and nail to defend the artillery batteries behind her. As the last line of defense, she held on and drove the invaders off by turning herself into, as we said before, a living IED. By some miracle, she survived by a hair and was celebrated as the Empire's youngest war hero. It's no longer him anymore. Her name is Tanya. Aerial Mage Tanya the Evil. So, in this world, going back, it doesn't say how far. Could be centuries, maybe even millennia. There were legends of great beings who could render miracles by wielding orbs and staves. By researching these phenomena using science, which kind of goes against the premise of her being isekai to this world. I thought it was supposed to be a non-scientific world, but they are using science. Well, they're using science to understand and unravel the mysteries of magic, I guess. Okay, so, going back, these humans are able to recreate these miracles using a new magic, as they call it, but this magic is engineering. And, if there are any engineers listening, what you do is basically magic for most of us. This new field of study introduced to the world was called sorcery, or at least that's the best translation I can come up with. It's called Madogaku, which Ma stands for evil. So that's maybe that's how they get Tanya the Evil, but Ma from Akuma, we have Do. Basically, it's path, not really road, but like the path someone follows in their dreams or in their career goals. Engaku is just study. So the study of the path of evil, I guess, is the correct translation. But the way that most people understand it is, well, it's the study of magic. So, with this, a new frontier was open to humans. In addition to flying free like a bird, they can now use small arms to unleash magic on the battlefield, adding a new dimension to warfare. Of course, the deeper origins of mana and spells are not fully understood by those who use them, but being humans, when has that ever stopped us? It sure didn't stop the military researchers who threw themselves into finding ways to weaponize magic. It was Imperial magic engineers that made the first big breakthrough, the birth of aerial mages. By imitating miracles with engineering through the use of orbs, I'm not sure how they translate this, but calculation orbs, operational orbs, formula orbs, magic orbs. Probably use magic orb because that's the easiest to say. A new arms race began, and the Empire was damned if they squandered their head start. So they joined in as well. The Empire continued inventing things at a blistering pace and came up with a brilliant idea. It was called the Elenium Type 95. It was an orb that contained 4 magic calculation devices. Theoretically, it far surpassed anything in production at the time, since most orbs, according to this story, only had 1 computational circuit. 2 was unthinkable, and this one had double that. On the cusp of being completed, there was just one itsy bitsy teeny weeny fatal flaw in it. Without some kind of miracle, hint hint, it looked like progress in its research was at a dead end. Yeah. If only some benevolent deity would just listen to the cries of these poor engineers trying to figure out the secrets of the universe. Alright, here we go. Straight into Chapter 2. West of Berun, above the Krutskov Military Research Air Base, we see an explosion. Our heroine is having the battle of her life. Not against other mages, not against airplanes, not against magic even. Well, I guess it is magic. Lieutenant Tanya Degrachev is dealing with a very uncooperative computing orb. The experimental Elenium 95 is living up to the reputation of a new military hardware, not just a computing orb. I thought I was going to use magic. Well, don't mind my hypocrisy. By malfunctioning and threatening the lives of all its operators, this very, very uncooperative orb is causing problems for everyone, and Tanya is forced to call off the test and deploy her parachute, while using up her torn arms to hold up the smoking orb. So, yeah. They do a pretty good job of showing how badly her hands and arms get messed up by dealing with this orb. So, those fireworks were just the signals of another failed test. Taking a step back in time here, after successfully completing her mission for the Northern Command and being awarded the Silver Wings Assault badge for her actions, our girl was then given something any mage would want, a nickname, and hers was Tanya the Platinum. In order to garner more public support, she was used as a propaganda tool and paraded around the country. The only thing she could think of was how becoming a hero had cursed her ability to live a normal life. Thanks to being X, she was now a combat ace and would be forced to dance with death above the battlefield until her predictable death, whether it be sooner or later. Waiting on bated breath for her transfer orders, she had resigned herself to the curse that blasted being X placed on her. She, on the other hand, was pleasantly surprised to find her orders were quite the opposite of what she expected. She was getting transferred to the cushy job of R&D, research and development, far away from the bullets and blood. And here we get a little of that Rose of Versailles art. Got the flowers, the big eyes, the little heart in the mouth. Yeah. And Tanya is very excited to get that position in the rear that she's been dreaming of. Okay. Now we get into one of the best parts of this property, or this series. Right? It's how her actions and her words get misconstrued by those around her. And, well, she also has the inability to read what others think of her or about her. It's kind of like the character Ain's own Gaul from Overlord. But, things always turn out for him, but our poor girl here always gets the shortest of all the short sticks. She believes that she cannot show her happiness because that would make her superiors think that she wasn't serious about her career as an officer. So she 180s and puts on a face of an emotionless sociopath, as it says in the title card there, and questions the personnel officer if that was the best use of a combat ace. The guy, looking at his face, almost pisses his britches. In a stare-off, he sees her as a loyal soldier, and she just wants to keep fighting on the front for her homeland. Whereas she sees his grimace as a realization that sending children to fight was a crime against humanity. But then again, this is Tanya. So the man, he does see her as a little girl, but overrides his instincts and says, well, it would be disrespectful, or he thinks this, it would be disrespectful to treat her as such, treat her as a little girl, considering her achievements. And so, in what seems like a mutual nod of agreement, he understands that she wants to keep fighting on the front lines, and she understands that he wants to send her to the rear for safety. I'm glad they understand each other so well. So, he pushes past his desire to fulfill what he thinks are her wishes to go back to the front line, and falls back into his business face, and delivers the orders he was given by his superiors. Magic R&D needs her highly honed skills and practical expertise to push forward on one of their projects that's hit a hiccup. And if you remember what happened a few pages ago, you know what that is. Tanya accepts the order with no complaints whatsoever because, hey, what could go wrong? It's her dream to be positioned away from the front. So, in conclusion, our heroine gets what she wants and lives out the war in the peaceful arms of a government-backed military research facility. The end. Just kidding. And in the words of the great poet Nelly, it was only just a dream. As anyone with eye-covering bangs will tell you, real life is hell. Back at the Cruzcoff Air Base, a bandaged arm lifts our heroine out of bed, and she realizes the feelings of all the brainless fools she's had to fire in her past life, and the feelings they had of not wanting to go to work. a feeling that apparently she had never experienced before. I don't know about you, but I feel that almost every day that I had to go to school and I had to go to work. So, maybe we are starting to see empathy from this sociopath. She likens the new orb, the Selenium 95, to the infamous Italian grenade called the Red Devil, used in the Second World War. Alright, this thing was not a concussion grenade, I'm sorry. What do we call this? Percussion grenade? A contact grenade? Basically, it was a grenade that didn't have a timer. Alright, it was meant to be armed and thrown, and when it hit the target, it was supposed to explode after hitting. But it was not of the best make, especially during the war, when wartime constraints makes it hard to build anything to the correct specifications. It was dangerous to everyone, including the soldiers that it was issued to. They were never sure if it would explode in their hands, or it wouldn't explode when they wanted to explode. On the opposite side, enemies didn't like it either because, well, sometimes they wouldn't blow up and there would just be a grenade sitting on the ground. And they didn't know what to do. They would try to move it or try to avoid it completely, and it would explode for no reason whatsoever. So, yeah, that's the Red Devil of the Second World War. But our girl Tanya, she's a good girl. She gets dressed, brushes her teeth, and goes to work. Duty is duty. At the lab, she greets someone we will all get to know very well, Dr. Aldenheit von Schugel. So he must be nobility with that von. We now see Tanya at 12,000 feet above the airbase, preparing to start the tests. I assume here that they're using feet, because meters would put her at, Mount Everest and half again that. So it's just under what modern commercial jets fly at. So at 12,000 feet, if we're using feet here, oxygen is only 60% what it is at sea level. So I believe it would be 13%. I think that's what my notes here say. And the temperature is 75 degrees Fahrenheit colder than what it would be at sea level. However, if it was 12,000 meters, the oxygen level would be, by consistency, only 6%. Right now at sea level, we live at around 21%. So it would be a quarter of what we are used to. And yeah, it would be 160 degrees Fahrenheit colder, or 72 degrees Celsius colder than sea level. So it's probably feet. I mean, just judging by her attire. But she does have magic, so that might be helping her. So, long story short, she's complaining that it's cold and hard to breathe up there. We learn from her that most orbs only allow for combat maneuvers at 6,000 feet. After that, the amount of mana needed to increase in altitude gets ridiculous. So maybe exponential, maybe logarithmically. There's going to be a lot more magic that needs to be used. It's here that Tanya notices that the firepower and maneuverability of aerial mages is equivalent to our modern attack choppers, like the AH-64 Apache or the KA-52 Alligator. So the Apache is the American attack chopper, well used, well loved. Some people claim it's their gender. Then there's the KA-52 Alligator from Russia, which has a spotty record, at least from what we see so far. The Selenium 95 orb is a bit different though. By adding another engine to helicopters, that made them more powerful and useful. Compare that to the Cobra to the Apache. Cobra is a beautiful, probably my favorite attack chopper. It's a beautiful chopper, but it just does not have the power that the Apache does. So, and going back, this orb, yes, instead of doubling the cores, some idiot decided to jam 4 cores into the orb. So it reminds me of our CPUs nowadays. As a result, the orb sucks mana out of mages faster than explosive decompression can suck a human through a fist-sized hole. If you remember that accident that happened, oh wow, so I guess it's 30 years ago maybe? Happened in some diving rig, I think in the North Sea. Yeah, so on top of losing a bunch of mana, the slightest wavering in concentration would destabilize the 4 cores, leading to a Chernobyl-like cascading failure. So, being the good soldier she is, Tanya cuts off the mana flow, dumps the mana already in the morb, as this is all what regulation dictates, and she readies her parachute, only to have Dr. Shugel rip the mic away from, not the microwave, rip the microphone away from the engineer in contact with Tanya. And here is a hilarious argument that erupts between 2 stubborn characters. Shugel on one hand complaining that Tanya failed his wonderful orb, and Tanya standing her ground and complaining that his wonderful orb had failed again. He blames her for lack of focus and questions if she really is a soldier, while she hits back that it's not a soldier's job to appease the whims of a defective piece of junk. Kind of like the machine spirits of 40k universe. Yeah, so the artistic rendering of the argument is beautiful. Just two big children arguing it out. Then we go back to a monologuing Tanya here. She gains a new level of respect for the pioneers of flight, like the Wright brothers, who went through so much trial and error to give us safe flight. So these little tidbits that the author and artist add are always brilliant. Putting a little bit of history, giving us a little bit more background information. This is really something that I enjoy. And then we have our head engineer, Shugel. He is a true savant, claiming that safety features only sully the beauty of his invention and need to be removed so it looks better. Because, seat belts and airbags are out of fashion. Safety helmets, that's tacky, isn't it? So, if Shugel was testing the tolerances of the orb, maybe we could let it slide. But this was just a flight test. And it was turning into the explosive radius of a new weapon test. He keeps expounding how his 4-core orb theory is revolutionary, and Tanya needs to understand that above all else... going back to the CPU thing, more cores is great for a CPU. Intel and AMD have proven that. I believe, they're up to 16 now? I have an old computer. I think I only have 4 in mine. But I know they're cramming more and more power into these CPUs. Tanya, on the other hand, she is a soldier. She wants an orb that can reliably used at a practical level. And so here we have our conflict of interests again. Pushing the bounds of science no matter the cost versus I don't want to die trying this new thing. And Tanya laments that Murphy's Law is bound to come knocking soon and claim its due. Either by her crashing to the ground or her disappearing in a beautiful ball of fire. and she barely survives the continuously backfiring orb and deploys her parachute. She makes up her mind to put in a transfer request with personnel. So here we go to personnel. A bunch of well-dressed men are sitting in a meeting room, and this is the engineering personnel department. We find out that this is the third time that Tanya has requested a transfer, and they know that she is the end of her wits. There are arguments against allowing her to transfer because their golden boy, Shugel, is so close to developing a revolutionary new weapon, and Tanya is the only one that meets the demanding criteria that he needs. Yes, even scientists and engineers can have heated debates. I've seen some geology forums almost devolve into fisticuffs because two rock lovers couldn't agree on the name of a 3-centimeter layer of sediment laid down millions of years ago. Yeah, it doesn't matter where you go, there's always going to be angry people. Reddit, 4chan, wherever. So, these engineers, they are arguing that the amount of manpower and money poured into the project is leading some to think that this is an example of a sunk cost fallacy. Others want to cut the strings now because the only one capable of getting results is at their limit. Heading this limit is a gloved man with a massive scar across his forehead. And, well, he's using one of his eyes, wondering why of all the people, it had to be her. That's right, Tanya, in the middle of this. With no other options at hand, they come to an agreement that while the promise of such a powerful weapon is enticing, it just might be a little too ahead of its time. As a result, the decision to discontinue research into Elenium-95 was reached. Now we go back to the realm of the gods. The room, or the world, is kind of like an Escher painting, where all the JoJo stands go when they aren't posing for the camera. The gods are talking about how humans don't believe in them anymore, and how cultural progress is not in line with faith anymore. Most modern government systems and social constructs are like that, I guess. And, well, some of the gods are just baffled as to why it turned out like that. I think it's a South American god who was there. Said it was easy to, in the past, to draw people in. All you had to do was whisper a few words and that would fill all the seats in your temple. And sometimes the gods didn't have to do anything to bring people to their knees. Just people would come asking for help on their own. And I guess this is Buddha here. Buddha brings up the point that humans were more grateful because they were so powerless against natural disasters. That's why in the past they relied on the gods. And another handsome god agrees that mankind's progress has reached a point where gods aren't needed as much, since humans can do things on their own. And this all makes it harder for them to sense the gods. Man's inventions are now taking the place of God's miracles. Big Man X here then decides to drop some holy relics to these monkeys and force them to acknowledge the gods. And then we have a trio or a quadruplet of angelic knight-looking dudes. And these guys note that there are a bunch of those relics already on Earth, but, they are not used because they're mainly there for decoration or they're hidden away for safety. Use the tools that you have. So, Being X decides to add a little quid pro quo to this next relic they make. The user, tricky little thing here, the user would have to pray to the gods in order to get the item to work properly. One of the knight-looking gods says he has the perfect item they can bless. They say it is just below the gods in power, and if the humans had just one more millennium, they could make it work. So apparently they are talking about our good doctor. He has been making some calls to the deity zip code. And we now see Dr. Shugal seemingly going through a change of heart. He now sees his one-sided pursuit has hurt others, and now, well, he works for a higher power, and he just needs to place everything in the hands of the gods. Ruh-roh, Shaggy, that doesn't sound very good. So, there are two types of news in this world. There is good news and there is bad news, and Tanya is about to get both. She knows that the malaise that she's been feeling up to now is not only from using too much mana, but also she senses the gods are up to something. And she is correct. Her rest is interrupted by a young, well, comparatively young to me, not to her, messenger. She quickly dresses to show him that she is a respectable officer, but he just sees her as a cute little girl. And then we get to the cutest 3-panel set of her finally acting her age. It's a letter informing her that the Millennium 95 project was cancelled and she was getting transferred to an instructor position. That is great news for her. She's now dressed in her testing gear on the tarmac. That was the bad news. The bad news here is it's going to be the last test because everyone knows the project is over. Shugal is just using his authority to muscle in one last test run, even though everyone is protesting him, even those under him. But he's the boss. Tanya is worried that one mistake could actually wipe the base off the map. But mad scientist Shugal laughs it off, stating that sacrifices must be made for the sake of progress. And he will stand there with her in case something goes wrong. Tanya argues that she is a soldier, not a scientist. And Shugal checkmates her by restating everything as an order. With that, she fires up the Millennium 95 orb. So, we learn that all orbs can create a powerful defensive field to block attacks, bullets and explosions and punches. On the other hand, though, the destruction of an orb can turn it into a bomb. Shugal tells her not to worry because success had already been promised to him in a dream from the heavens. Tanya has a bad feeling about those words. Shugal goes full evangelical preacher mode, minus, fleecing the congregation so he can buy a yacht and a private jet. And Tanya notices that this change could only be caused by one thing, being X. So in response, she quickly tries to shut down the orb by cutting the mana to it and engaging all the safety mechanisms, stating that a court-martial would be preferable to continuing the test under a fanatically mad scientist. To her horror, nothing works. She then realizes that Shugal has removed all the safety mechanisms per his original design, based mainly on beauty, not safety. So, the orb's magic circuits quickly destabilize. Warnings are issued for all personnel to get to shelter because the orb is going to blow. Shugal is screaming that all you have to do to survive is to believe in God. Tanya knows she can't stop the orb and notices that the magic flowing into the orb is not only her magic. So I wonder whose it is. The face of a bearded old man flashes before her. Yeah, him. So, now we get a beautiful spread of pages showing Tanya's fear and anger. Yeah, look at this raging face. Suddenly, Tanya finds herself on a bunch of goat-headed statues that are standing above what looks like Egyptian statues, face to face with Mr. Bodhisattva himself. She is told, much to her chagrin, that the gods have seen it worth it to place a blessing upon the Elenium 95 orb. As a footnote, she is also told that she will feel the blessings of the gods whenever she uses it, and all she has to do is raise a prayer or two in return. No razor in this candy floss. Tanya is a little confused by the prayer part of the deal, because there's no way in hell that she would voice a prayer to any of those opiates that the masses so desire. Don't worry, little girl, we got you covered there. Through a clever use of miracles, prayers will pour out of your mouth when you use it. Perfect for the busy atheist. Tanya curses the gods for kidnapping her and basically enslaving her in this world. On top of that injury, the insult heaped upon it is that she is forced to use that cursed orb. In order to survive the upcoming conflict, she will have to use that orb no matter what. She likens it to being in a vicious circle on par with insider trading. Once you act on that juicy piece of info, you are forever mainlined into continuing that felony just to stay ahead. Resigned to her place, Tanya then wonders what happened to her body if she's in there with him. She's pretty scatterbrained, isn't she? One moment thinking about how she hates the gods, another as to why those things are happening to her, and then all of a sudden again, she's switching to, the reality of the situation. Fortunately for her, she is protected by the grace of the gods and is sent back to spread the word of the gods. We snap back to where Shuil is celebrating and praising God for the orb's success and demands that Tanya show him the results of his faith. Tanya activates the orb and the perfectly synchronized cores fire up to result in a miraculous magic phenomenon. Words of praise slip out of Tanya's mouth, encourage all around her to join her faith. Oh, almost like she's a god now. Oh. During this time, she loses control of her conscious thought and learns that she sang a hymn praising the gods. The Elenium 95 experiment was a success, and Tanya was confused on whether to honestly praise being X for making the test possible in the first place. So, after taking the necessary data from the test, Tanya was now freed from this type of child labor, I guess. Come on, CPS, where are you? Out of the frying pan and into the fire would more likely be it. So, the Francois Republic, a new nation, took this opportunity while the Empire was focused on its north to attack the Empire's west. Tanya was now headed to a new location for work, the battlefields of the Western Front. No rest for the wicked. So the scene shifts to an army training academy where two beautiful women are eating breakfast. One is eating considerably more than the other. The dark long-haired one is telling her friend Visha that she heard some rumors about the officer Visha was going to be stationed under. And Visha is curious as well. Will you look at that food? Anime and manga food always look more delicious than it ever does in real life. Like, just think of any of the Studio Ghibli films. One that sticks in my mind is, especially looking at this picture, Laputa. When Pazu, he cooks a quick meal for him and, what was the girl's name? Shia? The girl that fell from the sky. Where it was basically a piece of toast with a sunny side egg up on it. Yeah, I admit, I went through a phase of eating only that for breakfast for about a month. So, yeah, Visha is shocked that such a promotion is made at that time, but, curious as well. There we go. This was chapter 2 of Youjo Senki, the first book. I hope you like it. And now I will cut my stream so I can do a little bit of editing, and then I'll hop on for some